Mic check. Yeah, mic's working. One, two. This mic is working loud and clear. Good, good. I'm glad. This is a pain in my ass, this amp. Good evening! Evening, guys. Evening, evening, evening. It's midnight here in the UK, and I thought this would be a nice opportunity to jump back on the live streams. Had a pretty nice evening so far. Oh, I've got a screw here. Got a couple of screws here. What's this? Had a few glasses of wine this evening. I wasn't actually planning on doing any live streaming or any repairs or anything of any kind of any intellectual basis this evening, but I guess I got a bit pissed off with this amp, and I guess I just want to have it finished this evening. Ah, cool. Lots of stuff in the live chat already. Yes, I'm alive. I have not been blown up by a 24N40. I have not been exploded by a 38N30 or a 4868. Not yet, anyway. Evening, evening, evening. YouTube has changed. Like, is anybody else noticing that there's now on the screen here? There's now this yellow highlight on my bare vids on the live chat, which is cool. Ah, good evening to Matt. Long time no see. I haven't seen Matt on the live stream for a long time. Even in the more recent live streams a couple of weeks ago. So yeah, thanks. Good to see you, Matt. How's it going? How's it going? Still got the PSU vape. Absolutely, the PSU vape is the best. It is the best. Best upgrade I did. 250 amp alternator with big 3 wires. Yeah, that will definitely help out a lot. Get your voltage up and you get your power up. That is the main thing. You can't make power without power. So sort out your electrical system in your vehicle first, and you will have power. Yeah, I've been busy as fuck as well. I've actually done a shitload of repairs off live stream. This whole time that I've been off of live stream, I've just been basically working solid. So I've done a ton of repairs. I've learned a lot as well with various amplifiers, tar amps, and all sorts of other stuff. I've learned new faults and new ways to sort them, other bits and pieces. So yeah, I've been pretty good. Sandman TV says, I have an amplifier, 1200 watt and no sound. Can you help me? Not by that, I can't, unfortunately. I need to know exactly what's going on. Is the amplifier in protection? Is it not in protection? Do you have a green light? If you have a green light and you've got no sound, then probably the rectifiers are snapped, or probably the RCAs are snapped, or probably you have no drive. So you need to get an oscilloscope on the amplifier. You need to check the drive waves. You need to check you've got low side drive, and then you have the high side drive feeding off the low side drive. If you've got the drive waves on the output section, but you still got no sound, run an RCA into the amplifier. Check that the pulse width modulation changes as you ride the amplifier with the sine wave. If it changes and you still got no sound, then the issue is somewhere in between the FETs and the speaker terminal outputs. If you don't have any modulation on the drive waves from the audio, then you have an RCA input circuit fault. Probably the RCA pins have snapped off of the block. That's the most common shit that happens. Are you not dating anymore? No, I wasn't dating. I was working like bullshit. Right, so I'm going to continue with a repair that I was doing earlier today. This is a Hertz oh fuck, what is this? Can't even remember the fucking model number of this. Oh, this is a HP1D. So this is the amplifier that I'm currently working on, and I should probably update the this. I haven't updated the current amp from weeks ago when I was doing my repair with Ashley, which is the British girl that was doing sort of repair with me. So I'm just going to update this quickly. Hertz HP 1D. This is the amplifier that we're currently working on this evening. Okay, that's that sorted out. What's the best way to get up with you off stream? To catch up with me, to chat with me, probably from my Bearvids Facebook page. So if you go to Facebook and type in Bearvids, I will be there and waiting for you. So with this amplifier had a bunch of issues. The majority of the issues were due to a poor previous repair. I'm actually going to put on my my live stream hat here. This is a hat that I have duct taped a camera to because it gives you a nice point of view camera angle, so you can see exactly what I'm doing. Now let's see. There we go. So you can see kind of what I see as I'm doing the repair here. So yeah, this amplifier had a bunch of issues, mostly due to the poor previous repair. The driver board here, you can see I've actually changed the orientation of the driver board. I don't think it was flat like this before. I can't remember how. I think it was fitted upright before, and I've now changed it so that it's 90-degree angle. Makes it so that you can work on the driver board without actually having to remove it. So I can take my hot air station here and I can blow some hot ass air onto the driver board and remove these drive chips without actually having to take the driver board out, which is very handy. So as you can see here, I've run some CA glue to hold this in place, as it did actually come loose in the postage from. I actually fixed this amplifier before a couple of weeks ago, and it seems to have failed again. So this is a very nice amplifier. Actually, it has a very fast output switch wave for a bass amplifier, which means that it will do mid bass quite nicely. Nice high quality kick drums. The faster the output switch wave, the more information in the sine wave that comes out of the amplifier at higher frequencies. So basically the output circuit runs on a frequency. The lower the frequency, the less bits you have, the less steps you have in the sine wave on the output section. Now obviously for low frequencies you don't need that many steps in the sine wave to build the sine wave, because it's a low frequency, so it's very slow. But as you start going up the frequency band, you need a higher frequency switch to get a higher quality sine wave out of the thing. So this has a much higher frequency output sine wave than most amplifiers, which means that it will be very well suited to producing frequencies up to probably about 400 Hertz, if you so wanted to do that with this amplifier. Now this amplifier, I'm actually fitting this with FQA 40N25 FETs, which are these bad boys here. Let's put it up to my hat here. I wonder whether this will ever focus, because this is a Logic. There we go. 40N25, you can see that there. So now this amplifier was fitted with these FETs before, but as you can possibly see here, if I can, this is actually missing two of the FETs here because I removed them earlier because they were shorted. This amplifier's got a bunch of weird issues. When I power it up, it seems to kind of, when I power it up, sometimes it works straight away, sometimes it makes a glitchy sound from the inductors. It like makes a glitchy sound, and occasionally it decides to short the output FETs, which is obviously not ideal. So I need to try and work out why it works sometimes when you power it up and why sometimes it doesn't, and I imagine it's probably to do with the drive circuit. So the drive circuit, I already replaced one of the chips from just earlier today. It blew one of the FAN 70, what the fuck I put in this, 7393As. These are equivalents to the IRS 21844S. So if you do amplifier repair, you know that the IRS 21844S is a very common half-bridge drive IC, and I actually upgrade those. The upgraded part, thank you to H1 Nicholas for pointing this out, is a FAN 7393A. It's a much better chip. And the ones I fitted previously a few weeks ago, one of them died when this thing went down again. So I replaced that one, but I think I'd probably need to go ahead and replace the other one as well. It has a few issues here, so let's see what's going on in the live chat. Yes, GoPro head mount. Yeah, absolutely. This is all proper redneck bullshit style Sam has a girlfriend now. No, I don't have a girlfriend as such. It's complicated, but I'm not going to go into that just now. Welcome back to the Tube Doctor Fet. Been wondering where you've been at. I've just been working a lot. I haven't been anywhere. I've been in the workshop all day. That's where I've been. So yeah, this amplifier. First thing I'm going to do with this one tonight is I'm doing a top board repair because I can't be bothered to take the board out of this thing again. And fortunately, these FETs are actually quite accessible from the top board, so I don't need to remove the PCB from this case in order to complete the repair here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my soldering iron back on, and what we're going to do is we're just going to remove the pins from these FETs that I snapped off earlier, because I pull those out quickly, and we're going to take these out and we're going to drop some new FETs in this location. Fortunately, I have some FETs which are the same batch as the ones I fitted in here before. So this is some FETs from the previous order that I made when I repaired this last time. Now usually you'd have to replace the whole bank of FETs, but in this case I have some that just happen to be the same batch, so I don't actually have to replace all of them. I can just replace the two that died. So I actually have the wrong soldering tip on here. This is a really small thin soldering tip, so this isn't going to really do much, be of any use to me just now. So let's take that out. Oh bollocks, that's fallen off. Just as a disclaimer, I've drank a shitload of wine this evening, so this is going to be an interesting repair. Okay, here we go. Proper soldering iron tip is on now. I'm just waiting for that to heat up on here. We've got a 236 degrees, 346 degrees, and it should jump. Actually, yeah, 346 is where I've got the set to. I'm going to crank that up a little bit higher to about 370. I'm going to go for 370 degrees on here. And I'm just going to remove these MOSFET legs, these pins that were stuck in the board. Then we can suck the solder from the holes and we can fit our new FETs in place. And I think I'm also going to replace the other drive IC on the driver board, so you'll get to see that as well. So on this amplifier you'll get to see some top board FET replacement. Rather than taking the PCB out of the case, I'm just going to replace the FETs from the top board because I'm a little bit lazy with this one this evening. And you're going to see some SMD soldering on the drive IC. Okay, that's all the pins out. So now we're going to take our solder sucker. Anything new in the van? I've ordered a pair of Digital Designs Z4 subwoofers. So these are the Z4s, which are the 4-inch voice coil version of the DDZ. So it's like probably the most ultimate subwoofer you can ever buy in the world ever. And so those will be going in late August, I reckon. And those will be probably going on a big amplifier that I haven't decided what yet. Probably I might put them on a Bander 13K. I might put them on something bigger than that, we'll see. But I also need to do some power supply upgrades to the van, as it still has the well, I'm going to say Walmart's because that's probably the best thing that relates to most of you guys, but Halford's special leisure batteries. They're not even AGMs, they're just lead acid batteries in there at the moment, so I need to upgrade those to some proper decent AGM batteries, or maybe some lithiums. I need to put my super caps in there as well. So there's a few power supply upgrades I need to do to the van before I run big power, and obviously get the new subs in there. Can you explain how you're able to do a top repair are you just snipping the FET off and soldering to his existing legs? No, no, no. So I'm basically wobbling the FET back and forward to snap it off of its legs. Then I am using my soldering iron and tweezers to pull the remainder of the legs out of the holes. And what I'm doing now is I'm now heating up the remaining solder in the holes from the top of the board and sucking it out. So I'm left with the holes, you know, just the vias, which is correct. And then I'm soldering fresh FETs in place, the same as I would do from the bottom of the board, but I'm just doing it from the top instead. It saves me a lot of time here. You can't do this with every amplifier, and with amplifiers that have, like, you know, 16 FETs, it's a bit of a nightmare to do this with. But this amplifier only uses 4 FETs per side, so it doesn't, you know, it's actually time saving to do it this way, and I'm only needing to replace 2 FETs here on this side, so it saves time. Rather than having to take the whole amplifier out of the case, I can just do this method to replace these 4 FETs here from the top of the board, rather than taking the whole thing out of the case. Okay, so that's, as you can see there, hopefully on my head cam once it focuses. Come on, you bastard. There we go. So as you can see there, hopefully, if the resolution is good enough, the solder has been sucked from all of these holes. So I'm just left with now the holes for the legs of the FETs to go through. So let's take our new FETs. Now I need to trim these down to size, because these FETs, the legs are too long to go into the board directly. So let's snip off some of this length here. I'm going to go about halfway, which is the correct length that I know for this board. So we're going to do that on that one. We're going to do that on that one here. 1, 2, 3. Okay. And we're just going to slide these FETs in the board from the top like this. We're going to retrieve our thermal pad from the old FET, which is still attached here. And these yellow pads like to leave behind part of their... Yeah, they like to leave a little section on the old FET, which is really annoying. They're pretty shitty, these things. Right. Let's plonk that on there like that. And let's slide this FET into place. There we go. Push it back. And let's do the second one here. Push that in through the vias. I need to suck a little bit more solder from that gate pad first, because that's not going in very, very smoothly. Let's change my camera angle here for a second. So I'm just going to suck a little bit more solder from this hole, because it's not going in very smoothly. So there's obviously a bit of remaining solder in there. There's still a bit of remaining solder, still not going in quite smoothly, so I'm going to add some fresh solder to the hole, which will hopefully melt the remainder of the crap that's in there. There we go, fresh solder. Now let's suck it all out. There we go, that hole looks a bit better now. Let's take that FET again, let's try and pop that back in the hole. Okay, this one's still being slightly difficult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the FET in there like that. And now I'm going to add some fresh solder. And I'm going to push the FET down while the solder's hot. So that should squeeze down. There we go, perfect. That's what it needed to do. It's gone down a little bit too far, so I'm just going to grab my tweezers here, my pliers, and pull it back up as we heat the gate pad to the correct height for this FET. There we go, that's about right. That's about the correct height. Still a little bit low, but it's fine. There we go. Okay, cool. So the FETs are now perfectly in place, and we're just going to solder the other 2 legs in now. Okay, looking good, looking good. Right, so that is the two new FETs soldered in place. And just before we apply any power, it's always a very good idea to take your multimeter, put it onto continuity setting, which is the diode beep setting. I'm just going to make sure that we haven't got any solder bridges hiding under the board. So just take your multimeter and just check between each of these legs, each of these pins. Make sure you don't get any beep, any continuous beeps, any continuity here. Okay, looking good. And one more thing that I'm going to do on this board here is I'm actually going to replace one of the FAN drive ICs here, because I don't think these are running particularly happily. So I'm just going to take a new chip here, going to drop it onto the board here. We're going to take our tweezers and swap these two over, because this was working earlier, but it's doing some weird stuff. Sometimes when the amplifier turns on, it sends DC switch on to the low side drive, which isn't very good. So I'm just going to try changing this chip and see if that resolves the issue. So to change these chips, we just need to take our hot air gun like this, and we're just going to heat the chip up and heat each of the legs up like so. Go around in circles, don't stay on one place for too long, you can end up burning the board. So just go around in circles, make sure you heat up all those legs nice and evenly. And then with our tweezers, just apply a little bit of upward pressure, and you should be able to see when the chip's about to come off, just like so. So we're going to put this old chip to one side, take our new chip. Now, usually you'd have to refresh all those solder pads, but these are actually pretty fresh anyway, because I only recently repaired this thing before. So we're just going to heat those up a little bit more before we put the new chip on, get the board warmed up, drop our new chip in place, like so. Do one side first, let that cool, move over to the other side, heat the other side of the legs up, push down with our tweezers on the chip, as Lewis Rossman does, push down on the chip, heat the other side, get all of those legs nice and cooked up so that the solder is all nice and melted on each of those legs. Once we believe it is all nice and wet on there, we're just going to go ahead, put our thing back, blow on the chip, and we should be good to go. Now, there are probably some small little bits of solder floating around on the board here, so what we're going to do is going to take the amplifier, lift it up, flip her over, get rid of any bits of solder that are floating around in here. Even the tiniest bit of solder that you can't see with your eyes might be floating around in there and causing problems that's going to blow your amp. So yeah, that's the new drive IC fitted there. Once we have soldered a drive IC, it's a good idea just to take your tweezers and go around and poke each of the legs. Make sure that it doesn't move. Make sure that you can't push it off the pad. If it's correctly soldered, it will be soldered nice and strong to the pad, and you won't be able to wiggle or move the leg with your tweezers. If you can wiggle or move the leg with your tweezers, it's not soldered correctly and it's going to cause problems. So as long as you can't move any of these legs with your tweezers, then you should be good to go, and that is the case with this one. They're all nice and strongly soldered on the board here. Right, now we're ready to give this amp some power. So I'm going to go ahead and take my current limited power supply here. We're going to just touch the power in this one and touch the ground in this one. We don't need a lot of current here, so we don't have to screw them in very tightly. Just going to literally whack the power wires on the terminals there, and the remote needs to go in here. The remote's being a bit of a bitch. Come on. In you go. Alright, there we go, remote's in. So now, as you can see in the corner of my screen here, we have my regulated power supply. So I'm just going to go ahead and crack that on. Now I've got 14.5 volts on here. I want to test this amplifier at this higher voltage, because that will show up any issues if there are any. So let's go ahead and apply some power. Now, before I apply some power, I'm going to take my oscilloscope probe. You can see my scope up here in the left hand corner of the screen, and we're going to just literally pulse the remote. So I've got my remote on a foot pedal underneath the desk. This is very handy under the desk here. I can just touch it with my foot and the remote comes on. So I'm just going to pulse the remote for like a fraction of a second, and you'll see the rail voltage start to build on the scope here. So I'm going to touch the remote. There we go, and you see it moved on the scope here. It just went down by a fraction, and we can see that the low rail is starting to build. Now the low rail is starting to build. If we touch the drain of the low side FET, we should have 0 volts, which we do. If we build the low side rail a bit more like that, we should still have 0 volts on the drain of this FET, which we do. That's good, and you should have the same the other side. And on the high side, we should only have the top rail on the drain and nothing on the gate or source, which is correct. So this looks like it might work. So let's go ahead and put our probe on the drain of the low side, which is 0 volts at the moment, and it should turn into a square wave in just a moment. So let's give the remote full power and see if this thing works. Okay, so we have a square wave, and as you can see on my screen, on the top right hand side of the screen, we have 2 amps drawn at idle. Now this amplifier did do something strange when it was just about to power up, which I don't like. It does like a little glitch or something as it powers up. So let's do that again. I'm going to put you onto the scope view. So if I probe the low side drain, you can see that it does a glitch as it powers up. Possibly. No, it does it sometimes. It does it sometimes. Let's do it again. Something else weird happens, right? So I'm going to take my oscilloscope and I'm going to put it onto 2-channel mode, okay? So we've got 2 channels here now on the scope. And this amplifier obviously has 2 sides to it. You've got this side and this side. And they're each controlled by 2 separate drive ICs. So if I take channel 2 and I put channel 2 on the low side over here, you can see on the screen that builds almost instantly, but on the other side it doesn't build until a little bit later, which is a little bit worrying. That means that something's not quite right, which is kind of weird. So yeah, if I take my 2 scope probes, I'm just going to shifty the scope up and down, so we've got our 2 channels there. So if I put 1 probe on the low side of this side, 1 probe on the low side of the other side, you can see that one side builds before the other. You see that on the scope? They should both build at the exact same time, but they don't. One side is building way before the other. And that's possibly a capacitor issue, but it's not necessarily a detrimental issue. The amplifier might be fine with this, you know, having this weirdness here, this weird thing where the output waves don't build at the same time. But it is slightly odd. And I've not seen that before. Yeah, one of them builds straight away. I wonder whether it's got something to do with the driver board not being seated very well, because this driver board is actually in headers because it was the board was damaged by a previous repair tech, so I had to put it into headers so I could solder it to the board properly. So I wonder whether it's because it's not in the board properly. So that side builds quickly, this side builds slowly. It doesn't matter if I tap the driver board, it doesn't make a difference. Oh, okay, we had a little glitch there. Did you see that? That's the issue that I'm talking about before. So I'm wondering whether actually there's something not quite right going on here with this drive board, and something is not soldered correctly, or there's a capacitor that's bad, or something. Something's not quite right with this side of the driver board. But it does seem to come to life pretty quick. You know, it does seem to come to life eventually. Okay, I'm going to turn the voltage down from 14.5. I'm going to turn it down to something like, there we go, 9.9 is about where I wanted it to be at, actually. I'm going to power the board up again. And with the lower voltage, if there is a poor connection somewhere that's preventing the drive from building quickly, then having the lower voltage on there will be a problem for it. So let's see what happens now. Oh shit. So at 9.9 volts, we don't have any drive waves present on the board anywhere. Rare. Okay. Right, let's bump it up a little bit. Let's see. Let's bump it up from 9.9. Let's go to 10. Let's go to 10.3 volts, and let's see whether that kicks the drive wave into action. No, still nothing. Alright, let's bump it up to 10 point... Come on. Alright, let's bump it up to about 11, 10.9, 11 volts. Let's see whether that does anything. There we go. Alright, so at 10.8 volts now, 10.7, 10.8 volts, we do have the square waves being built. Right, interesting. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to let that power up and let the square waves get built here with 10.8 volts. I'm going to lower the voltage on the power supply and see whether the square waves disappear or whether they stay there. 10.3, 10.2. Right, they disappear. So this amplifier only works above 10.3 volts. This amplifier only works above 10.3 volts. That could be a design feature, but from memory, I've worked on different versions of this amplifier, and usually it works fine at even at 9 volts. But this does seem to have some kind of protection that prevents it from working under about 10.3 volts, which is fine because you shouldn't be running that low anyway. Right, let's bang it back up to about, let's go for 12.7, 12.8, something like that. Yeah, let's kick it back up again to a normal operating voltage. You see there's a glitch there again. There's a strange glitch that happens sometimes on power up, which I don't like. But it does seem to be working. Again, there's the glitch. You can hear it. You can hear the horrific scream come from the inductors when it powers up like that. Okay. What I'm going to do is so obviously if I give this amplifier back to the customer, what he's going to do is he's going to obviously have this in the car, and it's probably going to be, the car's going to be running at about 14.4 volts as we can see here, and there's going to be unlimited current on tap from the battery pretty much. So I'm going to turn the power supply right up to 20 amps, and I'm going to power this thing up from 20 amps when the amplifier's rail capacitors are completely depleted, which is going to be how this thing is going to be powered up every single time. So at the moment we still, if I turn channel 2 off, we still have 38 volts on the rail capacitors. So I'm just going to sit back for a minute and wait for that to drop down to nearish to 0 volts, and when it does, I'm going to then kick the amplifier into operation once more and see whether it comes to life correctly straight away or whether it glitches out and does some weird stuff. And whilst I'm waiting for that to happen, let's read some of the live chat. Daniel M says, in the last days I was testing some news and original IRFP 4868 MOSFETs, checking the RDS of each, all the same bath, and one was with 4 ohms in the tester, but some interesting thing that I noticed when I put 9 volts with a battery on the gate and source, the RDS was 0 ohms. I remember in your last videos that you are testing this, but in an amplifier the voltage is higher than your tester. On the moment of the test they put 4 volts. This is quite hard to read comment, but thank you very much Daniel M for your comments. Yeah, basically these testers, they don't read the RDS accurately to what it actually is, but they are quite good at telling you whether the RDS is consistent. So let's say you have an RDS of 0.002 ohms, for example. In the tester it might read as 0.3 ohms because obviously you have the test lead resistance, you have the resistance of the circuit and everything else bullshit going on in here. So yes, it will read higher than the true RDS, but it should read consistently. which is the thing. If you have a batch of FETs and you read each one and the RDS is all over the place, then perhaps that batch of FETs is not good. It should read consistent at least, even if the reading is not correct, it should be consistently incorrect. The IRFP 4868 are very hard to drive FETs. They have a horrifically high input capacitance. They need a very strong drive circuit to drive them. Yeah, okay, let's have a look. What else we got? It's funny how you audio nuts take years to get a bass car of your own, including Hard Acoustics, who has like 16 JBL 15s in storage. Laurie, this is very true. Yeah, he's got a fucking shitload of those. The thing with Henry is he obviously, this is his job, so he builds everyone else's cars, but doesn't have time to build his own, sadly. Yeah. Man, you fixed enough of these things to get better at a better desoldering setup. I like the desoldering pump, you know, it works well for me. I've tried a desoldering gun and it was a crap one, albeit, but I didn't get on with it too well. Maybe one day I will get a desoldering gun, a proper one, a Hakko one for example, but for the time being the pump, it works well for me, and I don't have to keep cleaning it out like you know, the desoldering gun, you have to clean it out so often and it takes ages. With this thing, you just push the thing back in and it clears itself out every time. It's low maintenance and very quick. I like it. Okay, let's see whether this amplifier has drained the rail caps enough for me to turn it back on full power now. Let's have a look. So yes, we have only got 1.5 amps now on the rails. So let's scope the low side drain again. We've got 14.4 volts going in and we've got pretty much unlimited current here. So let's turn her on fully and see what happens. It may kill a FET, I don't know, because this is a bit of a headache, this amplifier. See what it does. Yeah, it makes a weird glitch sound again as it comes on, but we do have switching. It does seem to work. So let's turn her off, turn it back on again. Yeah, I'm not that happy at the fact that it enables one side of drive before the other. That's a bit strange, but I don't really know that there's a lot I can, like, trying to find that issue is going to be mad headaches. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be okay. Well, there's obviously something not quite 100% happy here, but it's happy enough that it turns on every single time. Yeah, you know, it turns on every single time. It doesn't blow. It seems okay to me. But to be fair, this amplifier was so badly damaged by the previous repair tech. The vias were so fucked that that's probably about as good as I can get it. So I'm just going to wait for the rail voltage to sink back down in this amplifier. We're going to put the heatsink back on, and I'm going to bench test it at full power, make sure it works nicely. Having it powered up by the big Dell power supplies as well will be useful. It will tell me whether the thing is going to work being powered up by a vehicle or not, because that is the same scenario that it will be, and it will be very high current power up situation, and that's what I want to give it. I want to give it a very high current power up situation to see whether it's happy or whether it dies. Whoa. Oops. I had my current set very, very high for the vape. So yeah, right, let's get to putting those MOSFET clamps back on. Where did I... So some people will joke that you can fix things with a hammer when they're not going right, but in the case of car amps, you do fix things with a hammer to some extent. So that chip that I took off just now actually was fine. I believe that was this chip here. That FAN chip, that was okay, because I swapped it out but it didn't actually change how it was acting, so that seems to be okay. Okay. So let's put this one down to one side, put the back case on, and move on to something else. Working this late is normal for me because I generally tend to live stream when America is in their evening, in their afternoon and evening. So although it's although it's 10 past 1 in the morning here in the States, it's probably much earlier than that. So that's when most of you guys will want to be watching this stuff over in the States, which is the majority of my viewership. So I tend to do my live streams at this sort of time in the evening. Hey, good evening, Seth. Good to see you on the stream. I need a bigger hammer. I don't want a hammer that's too big. I want something that gets the clamps on there but doesn't damage anything if I miss. All right. Let's see what else I've got to fix. Oh, yes, I've got something big here to fix tonight. Okay. Okay, what's this? This is a Taramps T20.2, so this is a 20k amplifier. Yes. 20 kilowatts of Brazilian savageness. Now this amplifier seems to have some vibration damage. I've actually been looking at this amplifier for quite a while now, a couple of weeks, and trying to work out what's going on in the output section. So if we take a look at this amplifier, the output section is actually limited to just this section of the board. So yes, the amplifier is this long, and this is all power supply, yeah, All of this bullshit here is power supply, and just this small section here is actually the output circuit. The MOSFETs for the output section, I need to put my hat back on for this because it doesn't really pick it up on the other camera. The output MOSFETs for this are actually mounted upside down, kind of on the bottom of the board kind of thing, as you can see here. They're not actually on the top here or to the heatsink, they're mounted to the back of the heatsink underneath the board. So to actually access the output MOSFETs, we have to take the whole board out. Now, this amplifier it powers up and it does an output switching wave, which is fine. But once the output switch wave starts, it then starts doing a bunch of noise and a bunch of weird crap, very noisy shit, and I can't seem to figure out why. I tried changing a bunch of these chips. I changed the drive ICs, I changed the pre-drive IC here as well, bunch of other stuff, and I couldn't work out what it was. And I left the amplifier powered up and I started giving it a good old whack with the plastic end of my screwdriver in different places on the board, and it seems that when you knock it over this side, the issue gets worse. So I believe that we might have a snapped MOSFET legs underneath the board here from vibration. So in order to actually discover that, I've got to have to take the whole thing out of its case. So if you guys were bored this evening, you're about to become a whole lot boreder as you watch me remove a whole bunch of million screws from this Torrance 20K. Enjoyable evening. So yeah, tell me guys, what's new in the world of bass? I see Sundown have just brought out a miniature pocket-sized 500 watt amplifier, little mono thing, 1 ohm, 580 watts at 1 ohm, 14.4 volts, looks pretty nice. Quite similar to the Digital Designs DM500 in size, but it seems to bench potentially a little bit more power than the Digital Designs version. So we got 580 something watts on the amp dyno with the Sundown. When I bench tested the DM500, I just about got the 500 watts out of it. But then saying that, I'm not the amp dyno, so the point which the amp dyno tests things to might be different to how I test it on my scope, because I don't have a wave analyzer, so I can't measure the exact THD percentage like the amp dyno does. I just bench things to where it on the scope, the sine wave. I run it to the point where the sine wave still looks like a sine wave just before it turns into a square wave, just before it starts squaring off. I pretty much run it right to the top of the sine wave just before it touches the rails. SDB Design says, hey bro, I'm watching you from the UK at this time. Well, that's pretty late to be watching from the UK, so yeah, appreciate you tuning in. Thank you very much. See, the thing with the Orion and wait, how did you guys say it? Do you say Orion or Orion? I always wondered how different people pronounce it differently. Some people I speak to say Orion, some people say Orion. Or Orion? Is it an Orion HCCA or is it an Orion HCCA? Anyway, I'm going to call it Orion because that's just what I feel like saying at this moment in time. Yeah, the Orion amplifier, yes, it looked like it shat all over the Sundown, but the Orion was a 3K 12 volt amplifier and the Sundown was a 3K 14 volt amplifier. I think people forget that. They just look at the number on the case and they look at the model number of the amplifier being a 3K, and they just forget actually that the voltage ratings on that. The Orion amplifier is actually really probably like a 4K amplifier. It should be labeled up, you know, in all intents and purposes as a 4K amplifier at 14.4 volts. But because it says 3K on it, and it gets into your head that it's a 3K amplifier, even though it's 3K at 12 volts, you instantly then compare it to other 3K amplifiers like the Sundown, which is actually 3K at 14 volts. So yeah, it looks like it's a lot better, but actually it's a more powerful amplifier to start with. Its ratings are more powerful than the Sundown. The Sundown isn't a 3K at 12 volt amplifier, it's a 3K at 14 volt amplifier, which it did. It made rated power. And the Orion probably made rated power as well. So yeah, the Orion is a more powerful amplifier for the money. But having looked at those full bridge designs and worked on a few of them, they are not reliable. They do have a design flaw. It's not the best drive circuit for those output FETs. The Sundown will last you longer. The Orion will die much sooner. Even though it's cheaper in the first place, it does a bit more power. The Sundown is, in my opinion, the better buy, even though it's much more expensive. Don't get me wrong, there are better amplifiers to purchase if you're looking for a 3K amplifier at 14 volts than the Sundown. Sundown is nothing special, it's a generic circuit board that they're charging a fortune for, so there are definitely better options than the Sundown in terms of value for money. The Orion looks like a good deal, but I would be wary with these Korean full bridge designs as they are not perfected. They do have some issues. The FETs aren't paralleled and driven optimally yet, and they do have reliability issues. Good to see you again. You had me thinking you retired early. Nah, not at all. Just been very, very busy. Oh, it's actually roasting hot in the UK at the moment. It's like 32 32, 34 degrees. And even at night time in the workshop, having that hat on my head is just really hot. It's not very comfortable. So I'm going to take that off just for the time being. Let's get all these screws out of here. This is a lot of screws in this board, which is good. It's clamped down to the heatsink nicely. Now this amplifier came from a customer who vibrates the crap out of his amplifiers. So the fact that this one is still looking in such good condition in terms of lack of vibration, visible vibration damage, is quite a miracle. And I think he's had this one for a long time. So this one has obviously lasted and stood up to a lot of vibration abuse for a long time. But I think possibly that vibration has just taken its toll on the output section here. And that's what we're going to find out when we get this thing out of the board. Going to have a look at those output FETs and see whether any of those legs are actually snapped off or not. About 34 in the US. Yeah, it's similar here in the UK. Maybe a couple of degrees lower, not quite as bad. But for us over here in the UK, it's like, what the fuck? It's bloody hot. It feels crazy hot. Because we're not used to this over here. And also, in the UK, when it gets hot, it gets heavy, like very muggy, very humid heat. And it's very sticky, and you just kind of sit there doing nothing and you're sweating. It might be the same in the US, but I know that you guys in the States are geared up for hot weather like that. You have aircon in your homes. Over here in the UK, no one's got flipping air conditioning inside, or if they have, it's because they just bought a cheap unit from Argos the second it got hot. They don't have air conditioning built in to your homes, in the bedrooms, in different rooms. It's not built in, you know. Because to be fair, most of the time you don't need it. There's maybe like usually what 4 or 5 days a year when aircon indoors would be nice. The rest of the year it's not required, so people generally don't tend to go for it. But this year has been something of, yeah, this year's been crazy. Crazy hot for a long time. Amir says, from singing about boxes to repairing amplifiers, I'm enjoying seeing your progression. I'm watching from the UK and would love to demo my system to you one time. Amir, I'd love that. I would absolutely love to hear your system. Let me know what you've got, and hell, maybe I'll even do a feature video of it. That'd be pretty cool. I love doing feature videos of other people's systems. I did the I did a very small video of the Pioneer SPL 3004 wall. That was pretty nice, but I really enjoy videography, so I enjoy doing videos of other stuff, not just my own builds. So yeah, absolutely, dude. I'd love to hear your system. I love hearing all sorts of different brands, different builds, and yeah, if you'd like a little video made, then that would be wicked as well. I think I've removed all these screws in here, so let's... Oops, my solder disappeared. We need to get rid of some of that mastic on the side that's holding it in place. Where is my standy blade? Let's use this. God damn it, I can never find my standy blade when I need it. It's like, it's always on the bench somewhere, but never when I need it. My bench is pretty tidy for me at the moment. Usually it's a proper mess. Do you know the Dayton Ultimax 18s? Yes, I'm aware of those. If so, what do you think about 2 of those on 3K in a 25 Hertz ported box in a small car? The Ultimax 18s, they don't like a small box. They do like to be given quite a bit of space to breathe in. So if you're going to be using a small car, then a box for a pair of 18 Ultimaxes is going to pretty much take up the whole of whatever space you have in the back seats or whatever, or the boot area. But that should be pretty nice. The Dayton Ultimax are wicked subs. 3K, yeah, that's about right for those. I think they're a 4-layer 3-inch coil. So yeah, 3K is about right for the pair of those. 25 Hertz is a good tuning as well. They do like, oh, holy fuck. Yeah, this amplifier has definitely got some vibration damage. Okay, so now that I've actually removed the MOSFET clamps, I can start to actually see what's going on here. So this is the power supply here, and already on a couple of these FETs we can see, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but this FET has actually disconnected from the board here. It's wobbling around on the solder joints, it's not connected properly, and so yeah, I definitely believe that we have some further issues down the line here with these output FETs. So I'm just trying to remove the board here from the case very carefully, because it's quite a flexible board, and I don't want to take all of these thermal pads with the FETs. I was trying to leave them on the case rather than taking them with the bloody... Yeah, I'm just trying to pry off the thermal pads from the back of the FETs. I want them to stay on the case, because if they come with the board, then they're going to fall on the floor and get lost, because these are single ones on this board. Right, grab the capacitors here. We're going to lift her up all in one go, like so. There we go. Now I'm just going to rest her on her side like that. There's one thermal pad here. Let's take that off and put her back down on the case. Okay, any more thermal pads that came with it? One more here. Let's put her back on the case. Okay. Right, I'm going to put this on my lap just for a second. I'm going to get rid of the heatsink. Very lightweight heatsink, which means we have a very heavy board, because this is quite a heavy amp. Okay. I'm going to remove this foam pad actually, because it's too small. It's just going to warp the board while it's on my desk. So I'm going to put the board down on the desk flat like this. Okay, so as we saw just a moment ago, this amplifier has been vibrated to shit, and we do have some FETs here which have actually come off of the board. They have desoldered themselves through vibration. As we can see, we've got this FET here is no longer attached to the board. And I'm going to go along each FET. I'm just going to see how well it's connected to the board here, see how many of these have come disconnected from vibration. So far we've only got one. And this is the power supply section of the board, so this won't necessarily be contributing to our output section issues. Oh, we've got a second one there with the snapped leg. Okay, third one there. That one's looking a bit funky. That one's not looking that great either. That one's alright. That one. This one is not perfect. Okay, let's check the other side. Okay, so it's possibly only one or two from that side that were very bad. Yeah, one or two from this side that were bad. Now, the main issues was the output section, so I'm just going to check the rectifiers. These all seem to be good, I think. So I think the main culprit here is definitely vibration. Okay, now let's flip the board over, because on the underside of the board we have the output FETs. And there we go. There are all of our output FETs. Let's move these LEDs a little bit. Okay, so yeah, I wiggled these a bit earlier as I was powering the amplifier up, and it seemed that by touching different parts of the board it did change the issue on this amplifier. So, but none of these look like they are damaged or snapped off particularly. They all feel like they're seated down pretty well. So yeah, it's a little confusing, because I was expecting, to be honest, I was expecting to see some snapped legs on these FETs, to be perfectly honest with you. But I can check this by powering the board up and giving these FETs a wiggle like this, because if there are any snapped legs on the actual FETs themselves, then wiggling it like this will cause the drive waves to drop in and out, and I'll be able to tell what's going on. So I'm just going to give it a wiggle like this, just get a visual inspection going on. They all seem to be pretty intact over this side. Okay. Right, let's flip the board back over, I think. Now these LEDs are going to get crushed. So I'm just going to try and put them down manually away from anything that they're going to short against. There you go, like that. That should do fine. Right, let's flip her back over. And I'm going to resolder the power supply FET that was loose. Or a couple of power supply FETs that were loose, and then I'm going to power it up out the board and see if I can make the issue better or worse by powering this thing up. So let's take our soldering iron and let's fix the power supply FETs that appear to be coming off the board here. Beverage, I've simulated them in approximately 7 cubic foot with an F3 of about 23 Hertz. Does that sound good? It's not supposed to be extremely loud. Yeah, that sounds pretty nice. Yeah, the Daytons will sound nice. If you're not after numbers, the Daytons will have a beautiful sound to them. Very, very smooth, very low, very deep, very clear. They're very good woofers. Yeah, very nice. Hi Sam, good to see you once again. And what a badass setup for the guts of that amp. Yeah, this is an old school Tar amps. Tar amps. I think this is a much better design and stuff than their newer amps. To be fair, I actually prefer this layout of this design. It's much nicer, much more beefy, in my personal opinion. Right. Turn the soldering on off, have a quick vape, and then we're going to turn this amplifier on and see if we can make it do the issue and find out where the issue is. Amir says, if I wanted to send an amplifier to you, what's the best way to contact you? Go to Facebook and type in NSV space audio. NSV audio, or you can go to facebook.com/NSV audio and send me a message on there. If you're based in the UK, you're welcome to send me an amplifier. If you're based elsewhere in the world, the US or Europe, then it might be too expensive to send your amplifier to me. Depends on where you live, so we can have a look at getting a shipping quote, see how expensive it's going to be. But generally I only really take on work from the UK. Anything overseas from the UK tends to be a bit expensive to ship over, but I will consider it if obviously you're willing to pay the extensive shipping on that. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to fire this baby up. Now this amplifier is flipping stupid. It's in terms of the voltage on the rails. The rail voltage on this amplifier is extremely scary. This could kill me. The voltage potential on this is dangerous. So I need to be very careful with what I'm doing here. And so yeah, we're just going to start to power this thing up. There's very, very high voltage on this amp. Okay, actually I think that FET that I soldered back on was actually shorted. Because I've resoldered it back on, now I have a short across the power supply. And that's often the case. When a FET snaps off the board like that, it will often short out. Yep, that is the case. This FET is indeed shorted. 31 ohms, 11 ohms. So sadly, we're going to have to get rid of this FET on here. And this is an IRF 1404. So once this is finished, I'm going to have to change all of the FETs on this bank, replace all these ones to new FETs. So yeah, this FET is in fact shorted out. Probably should have checked that before I resoldered it. Yeah, that's dead. Now we can leave that FET out. We can leave her out. The amplifier is now charging the rail cap. So yeah, that FET that was actually disconnected was shorted, which does make sense. As a FET comes disconnected from the board, it'll often leave two of the pins connected at any time to the board. And so, for example, if the gate is disconnected off the board, but the drain and source are connected, then current will rise on the gate just naturally, and the FET will explode or short itself out internally. Again, similarly, if the drain comes off the board, then the gate will be driving nothing, and it won't be happy. Yeah, that FET is dead. So now that we've removed that FET, we don't any longer have a short on the power supply section. So we're going to have to replace that batch. But we can do a couple of tests with it off the board just for the time being. So let's power her up very, very slowly and very carefully and see what we've got going on the output section. Dirt Technic says, one last question, what electrical upgrades would you recommend? I thought of just a 300 or 320 amp alternator with excess power in the lithium battery. On 3K, that'll be perfectly enough. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, more than enough. Yeah, that'll be perfectly fine. Good big alternator and a decent battery, that should be more than enough for you for that setup that you're talking about there. Okay, so rail voltage is starting to climb. We've got 20 volts on there already, so let's go up a little bit further just now. I'm going to increase the current to the amplifier to 8 amps here. So we've got 82 volts on the rail now. This is going to go skyrocketing high. We're now at 147 volts on the rail. And we have a switch wave. Now, what this amplifier was doing before is exactly this. See this? It's glitching out all over the place. And that glitchiness produces DC voltage on the output terminals, which is obviously going to damage speakers, and it sounds horrific. It sounds like a dial-up modem, actually. So that is the issue that this amplifier is doing. Now, earlier on, when this amplifier was in the case, I was giving it a good old whack with the screwdriver, and I was able to make the issue worse by pushing on a certain part of the board. So if I take my probe here, I would quite like to actually put my probe permanently on part of the amplifier over here. Get that wire out of the way. And I'm just going to give it a little whack with the screwdriver here. So at the moment it's working fine, and in a moment now it's glitching out like crazy. Now it seems fine. So if I give it a little tap, I was earlier able to get it to do worse stuff. But now I can't seem to get it to do that anymore. Very annoying. Okay. Ah, okay. That's annoying. It's not doing anymore. Okay, so at the moment it's working fine. The drive waves are equal. Yeah, at the moment, see that drive wave? It's equal in amplitude, it's equal in pulse width modulation. So that's working fine. We'll have 0 volts on the output, which is perfect. But it probably will start to glitch out in a minute. It's continuing to work fine just now. It's powered off and powered back on again. It's very temperamental, this thing. I'm going to increase the voltage slightly to the amplifier. I've got 9.9 or about 10 volts going in, so I'm going to give it about 11 point something. There we go. So let's give it a little bit more voltage just now. Okay, so now we have the issue. Now it's glitching out like crazy. Can't figure out what it is that is causing it. I'm going to flip the board over in a minute and I'm going to try and wiggle those output FETs and see if that makes a difference. But in order for me to do that, I do need to wait for the rail voltage to sink back down, because at the moment the rail voltage is currently sitting at 182 volts. So I don't want to go ahead and move the board around just now, because if I touch that 182 volts, then that's not going to be very good for me. So I'm going to have to wait for the voltage to sink back down. I could run it through my dummy loads and get it quicker, but I can't be bothered to wire that up just now. So we're going to sit and have a chat for a minute while that sinks back down to 0 volts. Very, very strange indeed. Very weird issue. Got to be bad if the hammer's out. Yeah, this is an intermittent issue with the Hertz 20K.2. It's a 1 ohm, 20,000 watt amplifier. Yeah, it has a weird intermittent drive issue on the output section. I've been struggling to figure out what the bloody hell causes it at the moment. You turn it on and sometimes it works fine, and then it will start glitching out. I've changed the drive ICs, I've changed the pre-driver. The only thing I haven't changed is the PIC chip, because I don't have any of those. Taramps might be able to provide me with a spare one if they have any left in stock, because this is quite an old amplifier now. But yeah, very strange issue on this one. Just out of curiosity, what might be a rough estimate for the aforementioned ruinously expensive way of shipping from UK to US if the amp in question were mid-size and not super heavy? There isn't really any way around it. Like, if there was, people would ship stuff back and forth to the States and the UK all the time. But it's just, unfortunately, it's just very expensive to ship stuff between our two countries, sadly. Oh yeah, the badge still says I'm working on the Hertz. I always forget to change that damn thing. There we go. Taramps 20k, that'll do. Modbox says, I've got a question. I'm starting to tear into a twisted 3.5k that does around 8k I removed all 12 IRF P, that should be 1405s, and they're spendy. I pulled about 12 burnt ones out of the board when I apply the remote. No power indicates LED comes on, and every pass of the board plus minus speaker out has input power on it. Modbox, that means that your ground isn't connected properly. If you have an amplifier board and you are giving it like 10, 11 or 12 volts and you try and turn the amplifier on, and every single point on the board that you test has 10 or 11 or 12 volts on it, and you're like, what the fuck, why is there 12 volts everywhere? That is because your ground is not connected properly. I have suffered that many times before I realized that was the issue, and I was scratching my head thinking, what the fuck's going on, why have I got 12 volts everywhere? And it turned out that my ground wasn't connected properly. Because if you think about it, if your ground isn't connected properly, then your testing device, your scope or your multimeter, is going to see a 12 volt potential difference between the board that you're testing and the ground, regardless if the ground isn't connected properly. So yeah, that's the problem. Connect your ground up properly and that will resolve itself. But yeah, Modbox, you need to replace every single one of those 1405s. You can't just change the ones that burned, you got to change every single one of them. Looks like it got better the last time you hit it, right before you powered it down. Yeah, it's one of those things where it could have got better when I hit it, or it could have got better just on its own accord. It kind of comes in and out of glitching. It's a very, very annoying, weird issue. So I'm going to wait for the rail caps to empty a little bit, and then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to poke around a little bit on the back. At the moment, we are still sitting at... shit. At the moment, we're still sitting at 120 volts on the rail, so that's a... yeah. Might be here for a little while. Might be cheaper to ship from Canada to UK. We have a trade agreement with them. Yeah, that might be the case, yeah. So, okay, just whilst we wait for the rail capacitors to sink down a little bit, let's have a look at this power supply section, because we've got a dead 1404 in there anyway. Let's get rid of that the power supply voltage on the caps there, so it's gone. So we have one single dead FET over here in the power supply section. That didn't work. So let's go back over to this side. So yeah, there's a missing FET here, which was a dead FET on the power supply section that was stacked off the board. So I'm just going to work out how big this bank is and how many of these I need to replace. So if we probe the gate, which is this one, all the gates will be in parallel with each other. So we've got this gate in parallel with each other. This... ah! Okay, now I've got another one over here. 1, 2... ah, Jesus. There's a lot of these in parallel. Ah, crap. So we've got to change 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there's 9, 10. Right, so there's 10 FETs in parallel. So just because one of these FETs died means that we probably should change 10 because they're all being driven by the same driver. However, they are on different transformers. There are fucking shitloads of transformers on here. So each one of these transformers is driven by 2 FETs. Sorry, 4 FETs. So you've got 2 1404s that drive the transformer one way, and you've got another 2 that drive it the other way. Almost like a bridge setup like that. So really, I could probably get away with just changing these 2 here with new 1404s. So perhaps whilst we're waiting for the output rail voltage to sink down, maybe I'll go ahead and do that and try not short out the output rail with my solder wire here, because that would be scary. That would be a big bang. Okay, let's get my tweezers. I don't know how much IRF 540s cost per piece. I think they're about 40 or 50 pence, probably about 60 cents each. They're very cheap. They're pretty old FETs now, so yeah, pretty cheap. Welcome back, Sam. Do you ever get any MMATs over there? Yes, there's some juggies floating around. I haven't really seen many of the MMATs amplifiers, the MMATs amplifiers floating around, but there's a bunch of the Juggernaut 18s over here. And the guys over here really like them. They're very well thought of. Hello from Houston, Texas. How's it going, buddy? Yeah, MMAT's pretty decent. They're some nice old school gear. Okay, so that's that FET removed, and let's just remove its neighbour here next to it. This is its parallel partner, so that one can go as well. So we just need to replace those two. Now, fortunately, because we have a surviving FET here that's actually now quite hot, these 1404s, they can vary in specification between batches. So, what we're going to do is we're going to put it in our transistor tester here. We're going to measure the specification of this exact FET. As you can see here on the screen, we have a VT of 2.8 and RDS of 0.2 and a CG of 10.8. So the important one that we match is the VT. The VT is the turn-on voltage of this FET. It's the gate threshold voltage. So if I can find a couple of 1404s that have a VT of close enough to 2.8 volts and a similar gate capacitance to 10.8, then they should work fine without much complaint. So let's have a look, see what we've got in my drawer here. So we've got another batch in here, which is a P506D. So let's have a look and see what this one measures. 3.3, so that's quite a bit different, I think. Yeah, 3.3. That's very, very different turn-on voltage. So I wouldn't feel comfortable. Oh no, hang on, 2.9. It's a little bit further off than I'd like. Let's see if we have any more in here. There we go. Right, this one is also 2.9. So this is exactly the same VT as the FET I just pulled. So that is a one of these batches over here. This is a P745Y. So I think the P745Y batch will work perfectly in place. Okay, that one's fucking way higher. 4.4 and a gate capacitance of 6.05. Are these the same batch? No, they're different. This is a 726Y, that's a 745, right, so they're different batches, even though they look the same. Okay. So that just goes to show you how much they can vary between batches. So we're looking for, we've got a 726, that's one of the ones that was the same VT as the one we pulled from the board. So hopefully this one's the same as well. 3.0, which is only 0.1 of a volt difference, and it's probably, you know, the tester can be plus or minus a little bit. So I'm going to use these two in place, and the gate capacitance is about the same as well. So batch P726Y, a pair of these should work beautifully in place on the board, and it won't fight with the other FETs in the other banks on the other transformers. So let's drop these in here. Very, very nice. And let's solder those in. Which solder wire do you use mainly to solder things? I use 4060 tin/lead, 60/40, so it's 60% tin, 40% lead, and it's from, I can't even read that brand, Actiduity solder. I have fucking no idea, but yeah, pretty much any decent quality flux core 60/40 will work fine. Alright, that's our new pair of FETs soldered in there. And hopefully they won't fight with the FETs next to it doing the pulling or the pushing, the opposite phase part of the transformer. We'll check that out in a moment with the thermal imager. So we can take our thermal imager, and if they're not happy, they'll get hot. So that will be a nice, we should be able to see whether they're happy or not by how hot they get. Now let's take a look at our output rail. Has this gone down at all from where we measured it earlier? Okay, we're still sitting at 56 volts on the output rail. So let's wait for that to sink down a bit more before we go ahead and turn the board over and start working on the other side. Do you tin the tip of your iron? Yeah, all the time. I'm always tinning the tip of the iron, and I also shove it into the cleaner thing, the wire wall thing here all the time. Ooh, yeah, tin it. I usually tin it, clean it, and then tin it again with fresh. Beva's got another question. Know those HTC HCQ A2300s? They claim to be stable bridge 2400. HCQ A, I can't remember what amps those are. Does that mean each channel is drove at 0.5? I don't know. I mean, yes, from what you're saying that would make sense, but I can't think exactly what the amplifier is from the top of my head. Hey Sam, good to see you back. I got a 500/1 I was working on done. It's a nice amp. Now trying to fix a Def Bonds Apocalypse 4K. Good luck with that, my friend. Oh, Audiobahn. I haven't worked on one of those, and I haven't actually run or set up or done anything with one of those in person. So, no, I would imagine that from what I remember about those amplifiers, you're probably looking at it's probably 1 ohm stable per channel, which is probably a 2 ohm stable bridge. I think. I have to try and remember what the specs of those things were back in the day. I don't think it's 0.5 stable per channel, but you know, might be. I'd have to Google it, which is something you can do. I don't have any information up and above what Google would have on that one, unfortunately, sorry. can see the current when I yeah, when I pull on the vape, you can see the current change here on the screen at the side. So into the vape, we've got 14 amps at 4.6 volts, I think that is. Okay, right, there's probably enough voltage dropped in the amplifier now for me to safely flip it over without causing any issues. So I just don't like the idea of touching like 180 volts on the output rail, so let's go ahead and flip her over. There we are. Okay, now I want something that's not conductive, for example this little plastic thing here. I'm going to wiggle the FETs around and see whether wiggling any of the FETs causes the issue to change on the output wave here as we run the amplifier. So let's plug her back in and let's see what happens. Now because obviously my current limited power supply has a very small wires and it won't actually, on the other side of the board I can shove it into the holes on the terminals on the other side, but I can't actually seem to get the wires to stay in this side, and I can't actually screw it down either because the grub screw just comes out of the hole because the grub screws are so small they won't actually clamp down to the wire. So fuck it, I think we're going to just solder these wires to the board this time, just to get this up and running. There we go, so I've just temporarily soldered my power wires to the board. Right, there we go. Okay, so let's take our scope probe here, let's shove that into the speaker terminal so we can see the output wave. Like so. And yeah, let's go ahead and power her up and start wiggling these FETs around and see what happens. Oh, seem to have a solder bridge somewhere. Oh yeah, massive solder bridge. Okay, let's remove the solder bridge. Oops. This solder wick isn't really working in my favour. What wattage irons do you use? I think it's an 80 watt from memory. I could probably do with a, I could really do with a better iron if I'm perfectly honest. The iron is not the best. I bought it ages ago before I was really going to be doing amp repair as a main thing, but it does work quite well for me. You know, it's not broken, so I don't need anything new just yet. But if anything starts going funky with it, I'll just go straight up and go for a decent, high-end, expensive one. This is only an AOUA, which is like a budget brand kind of. It's a pretty decent station, like in terms of its capabilities, but it is a budget station. It's not a high-end one by any means. Okay, I think that's my solder bridge removed. These legs are very, very close together. So doing the top board repair there was not the best idea, probably. Okay, still got a bridge there. Okay, I think that's removed it now. Yep, there we go, that's removed the bridge. Right. Now we should be able to power it up and see what's going on. Okay, nope, still a bridge somewhere. What the fuck? Where? Where is the bridge? Oh no, there wasn't a bridge. I just had the current turned down too low on the there. I had the current turned down too low, so it was taking forever to charge the caps, which looked like a short, and it wasn't. Right. Okay. Finally, that's probably why I shouldn't be doing this so late. So let's turn the amplifier on, and let's see what happens now. Okay, output wave is present, as you can see, and now it's starting to glitch and do all kinds of weird shit. So let's wiggle each of the FETs and see if that changes anything. Okay, that one's not really affecting it. Okay, that's gone into protection now, interestingly enough. Did I touch that FET ever so slightly as that went into protection just then? I believe I might have done. Let's do that again. Okay, now wiggling each of these FETs doesn't really appear to be having any effect on the output issue. It's still very sporadic. Interestingly enough, actually, the blue LED is actually flashing, which indicates low voltage. So let's give it a bit more. Let's give it 12 point. Let's give it 12 point something, which shouldn't then be low voltage. Let's give it 12.5, 12.4, so we shouldn't have any low voltage. Now, on these amps, the blue LED will flicker and flash if it's a low voltage situation. Okay, it's not flashing anymore, and we still have some weird shit going on the output. Oh, okay. That was different. That was much more intense than before. So that was this FET here that I just touched then. Right, let's see if I can lift this one up slightly. Get under it a bit more. Like so I can give it a bit more of a tap and wiggle. Right, let's power it up again. Oh, look, now I've got a shitload of DC on the output now. Look at that. That wasn't there before at all. The output should have no DC on it at all. Ooh, interesting. Maybe it should, I don't know. Okay, no, that FET doesn't seem to be doing anything now. Wiggling that FET around like crazy, it's not doing anything. Okay, that's stabilized. Now it's fucked. Now it's fucked again. Okay, then it was doing a crazy issue. It doesn't seem to do it reliably. It's not doing it reliably. Like, it's not like when I touch a certain part it does it. It just seems quite random, to be perfectly honest with you. It's weird. Can't quite figure it out. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I am actually going to just refresh all of the solder joints that I can see on the back here, just in case there's any cold solder joints that's causing that, but I can't do it yet because the capacitors are still very full. So I'm going to have to wait again for this to cool down and go from there. With the thermal imaging camera, we can see we've got a very, very hot area here in the middle of the board, 51 degrees Celsius. Elsewhere on the board, there's quite a hot section over here, which isn't present over this side. So it looks like if we look on the thermal imager here, we've got hot section just here on the PCB. Small hot section here and a hot section here, so it's like 1, 2, 3 in a small triangle on the back here. It's not on the FETs themselves. It's like seems to be coming from the other side of the board, perhaps. So I can turn that over in a bit and have a look at what that is. I can't do that just yet because there's 189 volts on the board. I don't want to touch that. Oh, so my soldering iron, although it's 80 watt, it's actually temperature controlled, so I can adjust the heat of the soldering iron, so I'll make sure it doesn't get too hot. It is important that your soldering iron doesn't get too hot. So there's only 12 FETs on the output. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yes, exactly. 12 FETs on the output for 20k. That is correct. Yeah, it's very high voltage. It doesn't need any more than that, really. These FETs are extremely high current, and they can pass that high current to do 20k. The Korean amplifiers you're used to seeing that use a lot of FETs, they are much older design, and they'll have much lower spec FETs, so you need a lot more of them. Okay. Well, I think that this is going to take a long time to sink the voltage back down again. So what I'm going to do is probably leave it there for this evening. Those two new FETs I fitted are staying cold, which is good. So they're obviously very happy. I'm just going to have to go ahead and refresh all the solder connections in here and hope that makes a difference. If that doesn't make a difference, then I'm a bit stuck with what to do next, if I'm perfectly honest. So, yeah. Cool. So if you've got any questions for me, guys, then get them in now. I'm going to be heading off the stream shortly. When testing with your scope, you put the positive on the output, and where do you ground it? Well, my scope is actually grounded by default through the mains, because my power supply that I use to test the amplifiers is also ran on the mains. So I just loop the ground through so that the scope is sharing a ground with my power supply. So essentially the scope is grounded to the same ground that goes into the amplifier's power over here. And I can isolate that by removing this wire here that I've got looped around. If I want to make specific measurements on the scope between a different part on the board, I can isolate the power supply from the mains. But for the majority of tests, it's just grounded through the mains. Are you going to be doing your live videos from now on again? Yes, Seth, indeed. That's correct. For the, yeah, so basically I'll try and do some live streaming either every evening or every other evening. I'll go back to doing live streams quite often like I was before. I just had a small break while I was very busy. But yeah, I've got through a lot of the work that I had to do, so now I should be able to do some more interesting live streams for you guys. Daniel M. That's very clever, yeah. So take all the diodes off so that the output section doesn't see the rail voltage, and then you feed the drive ICs with VCC voltage to activate them, and then the drive circuit will come into life, and so you can diagnose issues with the drive circuit of the output section without actually having the high voltage rails present on the output section at that time. Yeah, very clever. Nice way of doing it. I might even take a leaf out of your book, Daniel M, and do something like that with this one. We'll see. Yeah, I pretty much only work on car amps. I might start working on house amps soon. My issue was with mains powered stuff. You only get one chance to power it up after you've done some repairs, because the current is so high, and you can use a current limiting bulb and all that bullshit, but it doesn't really limit the current properly to save the circuit if there's a problem. So with like a PA amplifier, very complex, mostly class AB, so you don't have any drive waves you can really measure. You just have to go by voltages being where they should be and current passing where it should be and shouldn't be and stuff like that. So with a big PA amplifier, you can change a bunch of parts and think you've made a good solid repair, plug it in and turn it on, and the second you turn it on, the whole fucking shit explodes again because you've missed something. Whereas with the car amps, because I have the current limited supply, if I've missed something, generally the current supply is so low that when the issue presents itself, draws excessive current, the thing turns itself off so quick because of lack of current that it doesn't actually cause any damage. So with a PA amplifier, I was actually thinking a good way for me to repair mains powered stuff would actually be, rather than running it directly off the mains, and also running it off the mains I can't probe anything with my scope because of how it's grounded through the mains, I could actually run my 12 volt supply through a car inverter. So I could literally run a small inverter off of my current limited 12 volt power supply here, and obviously the inverter will be, I don't know, 65 or 70% efficient. So I can still limit the current going to the mains amp, but it will be going through the inverter with a sort of 30% loss, which is fine. I can still limit the current that way. So that way I've got various protections. So if I'm working on a big mains amplifier, I can turn the amplifier on slowly with a limited current. And if the amplifier draws excessive current because it's got a fault, not only will my inverter probably shut down because it will protect because of excessive current, but also I can limit the current so that the power going into the inverter is limited, therefore the power going out of the inverter is limited, so that hopefully it saves my arse. But I will need some experience in playing around with that and seeing how that works to actually work out if that's viable or not, a viable method of doing main stuff. If you're going to get into house stuff, make sure not to use standard resistors. Modbox, what do you mean by that? Do you mean like standard resistors, like gate resistors and shit like that? Like, do you mean to use like higher, better film resistors or something, or? I'm talking about lower ohms, like 1 ohm stable at 0.5 higher. Yes, flame-proof resistors. Okay, cool, nice. Thanks for the tip. I'll bear that in mind. Just looking to see if I can see any obvious cold joints, but to be honest, I can't really. There's potentially one cold joint over here actually. There's a couple of cold joints on one of these ICs over this side. It's interesting. Yeah, it could be one of these over here that's bad. They don't look too good. This thing has obviously been worked on before. I can see lots of hints of a previous technician's job on this. So maybe we'll refresh some solder joints and maybe that'll make it work, who knows. Do TL494s go bad often? Should I start stocking them? Nah, no, very rarely. The 494 very rarely gets damaged by amplifier failure. I have had a couple that have been bad that I've had to replace, but it is pretty rare. It's not very common. I'm not sure on the laws over there, but say you replace the gates in a house amplifier. If you use a regular, you risk direct shorts on mains. It could cause a fire in a return repair. Yeah, it's true. I probably wouldn't do any house amplifier repairs for customers. I'd only do them for my own stuff, especially for a while, because yeah, you are liable for a lot more in that respect. Yeah, definitely a lot more chance of fires on house amp stuff. Higher voltage, lots of power potential. The mains can supply horrific amounts of power when needed to. I mean, most houses are protected by RCD circuits and stuff like that, clever protection circuits for your house, but they don't always work, they're not always fitted properly, some houses don't have them, you can't run that risk. So yeah, definitely house amplifiers, you've got to know exactly what you're doing. You know, still with a car, but still with car amps you've got to know what you're doing as well, but I'm not very good at smoke rings. Right, okay, cool. Pretty short live stream for my on my record. 2 hours live stream. Usually they're about 8 hours, but it's pretty late and I'm getting sleepy. And yeah, I think we're gonna wait for the rev voltage to sink down on this, and then tomorrow I'll refresh all the solder connections on here, see if that helps it out. So yes, thank you very much for joining in the live stream, guys, and I shall see you in the next stream. Bye.